The Ancient Age is perhaps one of the least well-known time periods within all of Thedas. Most of what is known within the age revolves around the later years leading up to the founding of the Southern Chantry. By the Chantry calendar, the Ancient Age spans from about negative 7,600 to the year before the founding of the Chantry. The Ancient Age can be broken up into small groups, depending on when each event took place. There is the time of Arlathon, with its rise and fall being the most obscured and speculated within the age. Much of the early Ancient Age is actually written within history as believed or speculated. Much of when Arlathon was founded is an approximate date due to the degrade of information since the fall of Elvenon and the rise of the Chantry. The best guess historians have come to points to Arlathon being founded some 3,000 years before it is believed humanity first set foot on Thedas. There is nothing which remains now to state how long ago Arlathon was built, given all the history of Elvenon was tied into memory and the way the world was before the fall of the Elven Empire. Some 4,000 years before the Chantry, scholars believe the elves first made contact with the dwarves, though what occurred between the two races is left to the imagination of those finding what remains of the runes from the time of Elvenon. It is unknown when the elves first noticed they were losing their immortality to what was called the Quickening, only it happened almost 3,000 years before the founding of the Chantry, a few hundred years after some scholars believe humanity first arrived in Thedas. Though when and why humanity came to Thedas is still disputed among scholars, for none know why humanity left wherever they came from or even where they had come from. The time before the Imperium, which has been just as speculated as the time of Arlathon, with only hints pointing to small bits of knowledge. It is said the old gods first began to whisper to the dreamers of the Neromian tribe. Their whispers came from the Black City and taught their dreamers magic. This caused the power to shift. These dreamers would eventually become the priests and kings of their people. Almost 1,000 years after the old gods made contact with the Neromian tribes, they split into 4 separate kingdoms. These kingdoms are Tevinter, Neromian, Bardur, and Quinaris. Not even 100 years pass before the kingdom of Bardur vanished, leaving nothing behind of what occurred. Blood magic is discovered almost 25 years later by the first priest of Dumat, Thalson. He claimed to have learned this magic from Dumat by way of communicating with the old god. The Alamari tribes were also moving during the first whisperings from the old gods to the Neromian tribes. It is believed by scholars the Alamari tribes crossed the Frostback Mountains because of a natural disaster the Alamari tribes referred to as shadow goddesses. Eventually, the tribes settled in a land which would one day be called Ferelden. Centuries later, one group of Alamari breaks from the rest. This one lived near Lake Calenhad and became the first of the Avar. War erupts between the two sects which would last for centuries to come. About 400 years after the Avar broke from the Alamari, the Chasian followed, and settled in the Kakari wilds. The unification of the kingdoms of Neromian and Tevinter occurs when Darnassus, the High King of Neromian, takes the Tevinter throne. This happened over 1,600 years after the old gods were first said to whisper to the Neromian tribes. Not long after Darnassus's rise to power, a grand proving arena is constructed within Minrathous, as the gladiatorial contests have become popular by this point to the Imperium nobles. 12 years pass before Darnassus unites Tevinter and Quernus. This forms the ancient, mighty Tevinter Imperium, and Darnassus declares himself the first archon of this new nation. The same year as the rise of the Tevinter Imperium, they ally themselves with the dwarves. Over 3,000 years after the elves made contact with the dwarves, King Indrin Stonehammer moves the capital of Kel Sharok to Orzammar. Orzammar is a fast-growing taig at this point in time. During this same year, the Stonehammer Hall is constructed within Orzammar under the careful eye of its king. This is also when proving grounds are expanded to encompass grand provings. These were originally held within Kalsharok. Later, the best warriors from these provings would become the very first of Orzammar's paragons. Massive statues were erected in a hall by Stonehammer to honor these paragons. King Indran Stonehammer is made a paragon 39 years after the capital was moved to Orzammar. Just over 2 centuries after the rise of the Deventer Imperium, tensions rise to the breaking point between the Imperium and the Elves of Arlathon. War breaks out between the two nations. Only 14 years pass before the Imperium sinks the great city of Arlathon with blood magic. What elves survived this disaster are enslaved. Around 80 years later, the Deventer Imperium begins to expand its borders at a rapid rate. It isn't long before the Imperium has taken most of the north and begins to push down past the Waking Sea. 15 years later, the Imperium creates a settlement on the island of Eastwatch within the Waking Sea. They create a fortified port there in order to repair their warships. Over a century later, Almardrius takes the throne as Archon within the Deventer Imperium, and several attempts are made to conquer the Alamari. 45 years after Almardrius becomes Archon, the Imperium is successful in their endeavor to subjugate the Alamari. This allows for the construction of the Great Imperial Highway to cross the mountains to Ostagar. The Western Imperium is the first to attempt a split with the Imperium, managing it 65 years into the reign of Almardrius. They end up forming the Anderfels. Barely 2 years later, Almardrius is assassinated and replaced by his apprentice Tundarian. The same year, a civil war erupts within the Imperium. His reign lasts for 50 years, in which the civil war continues to rage. He dies without an heir, which only causes more problems, as the Magisters now vie for power. 20 years after Tundarian's death, a new Archon takes the throne named Parthenarius. The civil war comes to an end this same year. It is also when the slave city, Imeraeus, is settled to mine the jet stone for the great temples within Minrathous. This city is later renamed Kirkwall. Well over a century after its break from the Imperium, the Anderfalls ends up being retaken. It is believed the first Kossuth land in the southern Kakari wilds some 410 years before the Chantry is founded. They are believed to have settled into a colony which was later wiped out by the first blight. Scholars speculate this is how the first Orgs came to be on Thedas.